Something that has been on my mind lately is how during the last few episodes of Memo I spent a lot of time talking and not so much actually playing. And since this show is first and foremost about music making, I decided to shift the focus a little for this week and let the music speak for itself more. As promised in the last episode, I'll present a favorite composition of mine, one of Marc dall'Aquila's real masterworks, and comparing to the pieces I featured throughout the last weeks, this one is considerably longer and more intricate. So I chose to compose a little appetizer to establish the mood. That's what you heard in the beginning of this video, and perhaps you'll recognize some of its ideas in the coming piece. Anyway, enough talking. The response to last week's episode was so strong that I decided to dedicate the second half of this video to presenting some of the comments and questions from you, the viewers. First of all, I have to express my gratitude to the many people who commented and contributed their own insights, some of which I was completely unaware of so far. For example, the contents of an article by Hiroyuki Minamino, recommended by Emma Stein on Facebook, which further illustrates the story of famous publisher Ottaviano de Petrucci and how he didn't create the first printed book of keyboard music. It's a great read, and I added a link to this article in the description below. Many commenters actually agreed with my criticism of Francesco Spinaccino and his early lute prints, though I was also very happy about the voices raised in his defense. One very impressive contribution came from Sean Smith, who invested a lot of thought into reworking and re-evaluating Spinaccino's music to make it both more convenient to play and to listen to. Based on the results of this reconstructive project, I do actually feel inclined to perhaps have a fresh approach and dedicate another episode to these pieces at some later point. Though it also makes me wonder whether one couldn't just have invested all that energy into perhaps writing new, nicer pieces instead of trying to perform complex surgery on this old material just to somehow make it work, more or less. On YouTube, Ido Steimer asks, what do you think about modern lute music? That is, contemporary composers that compose new music for the lute, not necessarily neo-baroque or neo-renaissance, even atonal music. Perhaps surprisingly, there is actually quite an active scene of lute composers on YouTube alone, writing in all kinds of different styles. And during the days I spent listening to what I could find, I actually stumbled upon several compositions I really enjoyed. The whole concept of making new music in general is really exciting to me. Whenever musicians play music they made themselves, it gains an entirely different quality. There is just certain lifeblood to it that seems to come naturally. And when trying to interpret the composer's intentions, which is what we are all trying to do, I guess, well, it helps to be the composer. I should perhaps add, however, that terms like neo-baroque make me a little uncomfortable, especially because it somehow makes me think of this kind of thing. But how exactly is atonal music new? About 150 years have passed since the birth of Arnold Schoenberg. And what about jazz? Wes Montgomery was born almost 100 years ago. So shouldn't we call jazz played today neo-jazz then? In fact, to play music that is actually modern, actually new, using a guitar or a piano or anything with strings really, would be the wrong choice altogether. I believe that using a musical language that happened to be new a long time ago is not an act of trying to live in the past, as many people tend to think. Playing the lute and the kind of music it was built for is not something I do in order to become someone from the 1500s. It's something I do to express myself in the here and the now. Having received many more reactions to last week's video, there are still a number of comments and questions which I'd like to feature in detail, but due to time constraints I'll have to do so in next week's episode. This means that the coming videos program will be quite similar to this week's. One half music and the other one for comments and questions and answers. So see you next Friday, and until then,